there, and welcome to the Salted Pepper, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. And today we're gonna make a really quick and easy sausage gravy in the Ninja Foodi. This recipe came to be because I made some delicious homemade biscuits the other day in the Ninja Foodi, and I will link to that video right up there. Be sure to make them, they are terrific. And my husband took some to work, and his coworker said, well, where's the sausage gravy? You know, we live in the South. And I said, oh, well, I guess I have to make some. So here we go. Really simple. First thing we're gonna do is turn the Ninja Foodi on and hit the sear. We're gonna go ahead and keep it at high. I might adjust this down a little bit because I don't want the sausage to burn, but for right now, I'm gonna keep it at high and hit start. You don't have to set the time because the Ninja Foodi just defaults to on or off. I guess it figures you're gonna be standing here while you're sauteing, so there's no need to set a time. What I have here is 1 pound of breakfast sausage that came in a roll. This happens to be a mild sausage, but you could also use spicy, or even if you wanted a little maple flavor, you could get the maple kind. We're just gonna put this in. This pot will heat up fairly quickly. And once it does, I'm gonna use my nifty little mix and chop, which is perfect for the nonstick pot of the Foodi, to break this meat up. Once I break it up, I'm gonna let it sit, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. So what I'm doing right now is just sort of spreading the sausage. It's not gonna break up into those little clumps because it hasn't started to cook yet, but I am trying to flatten it out a little bit and to get it on the bottom because I want the most surface area of the sausage to be in contact with the bottom of the pan. That is gonna allow it to brown and create those little bits on the bottom that we will deglaze with the beef stock. So I'm starting to hear it sizzle, and I can already see some of the fat rendering out of the sausage, and that's what we want. And I am not gonna disturb it now. I'm gonna just let it sit in the pan and saute for a couple of minutes before I start working with it to break up the meat any further. Okay, so the sausage has been sitting in the bottom of the pan, still in large chunks, and I've allowed it to brown on the one side. You can see we're getting nice browning. We're also getting some nice little bits in the pan here, and those are super important for flavor. So we want that. That's a good thing. It's not burning, it's not sticking, it's just releasing some of it. It's, we call them brown bits, into the bottom, which we will deglaze. So now I'm just gonna flip each one of these over. And I have a spatula here, but you could use the little mix and chop. No need to dirty up another utensil. And now that we've flipped them all, I'm just gonna work it in here. We don't have to get the sausage totally done because we are gonna pressure cook this for a few minutes to allow the flavors to really come together and get our beef stock really hot. So when we add in the flour, it's all gonna incorporate without making a bunch of clumps. Okay, now that I've broken them up into little bite-sized pieces, I'm just gonna let it sit again to brown the other side and get all that delicious goodness onto the bottom of the pan. One thing I wanted to let you know is that you can make this from frozen. So if you have a pound of frozen sausage and you say, oh, I wanna make sausage gravy today, don't worry, you don't have to thaw it. All you wanna do is throw it into the pot with the 2 cups of beef stock and set the pressure on high for 15 minutes, and you can do an immediate release. And that'll pretty much have your sausage all thawed and cooked for you. And then you can move on to the other steps. That looks really good. And we have some browning on the bottom of the pan here. So I'm just gonna move this sausage out of the way, and I'm gonna put in 2 cups of beef stock. Now you could use beef stock, you could use chicken stock, and this is actually a combination of both because I had a little bit of beef stock to use up and then I had some chicken stock. So I just combined the two. Whatever you wanna do, you could actually use water for this as well, but the stock is gonna impart a nice flavor. Traditionally, sausage gravy is just made with milk. So we would brown the sausage and then sprinkle on the flour and then put in the milk as the thickening agent. But when I made it, I found that I really liked it with the beef broth. And we only use then a cup and a half of milk instead of like 3.5 to 4 cups. Okay, so I'm just gonna break this up, and I'm sort of scraping around the bottom of the pot here because I wanna get any of those brown pieces, I wanna get them off the bottom and into our stock here. And then I'm just gonna sprinkle on some seasonings. And these are optional. I do recommend using a little bit of salt, but if you're on a low salt diet, the sausage has plenty of flavor on its own. So this can be optional. But I'm gonna use 1 teaspoon of salt and a half of a teaspoon of pepper. Now, if you like your sausage gravy a little more peppery, go ahead and increase that to a full teaspoon. And then this is a little unusual, but something that I found that really gave some nice pops of flavor in our sausage gravy. And it is a half of a teaspoon of thyme, which is not ground, it's actually thyme leaves. These are dried though. And a half of a teaspoon of rosemary. You could use fresh or you could use the dried like I have here. I'm just gonna sprinkle that in, give it a stir, and then we're gonna get it on the pressure cook setting for 5 minutes. That'll finish cooking our sausage and also allow all those flavors to come together. Okay. Now, I've had a little trouble sometimes getting the lid on and off of my Ninja Foodi and my Instant Pot. And I just realized the other day, you guys probably already know this, but there are 2 little arrows that you can just line up to make it a snap to put the lid on. So you just set it down to line up those arrows and then turn it to the right. And it's locked in. We're gonna make sure we put it to the seal position. We're not steaming, we're under pressure. We want it to be sealed. And we will stop the saute and hit the pressure button. Looks like it wants me to turn it off and turn it back on again. Hit the pressure button on high, and the time is gonna go for 5 minutes. There we go. Now we'll just let it come up to pressure, which will take probably about 4 or 5 minutes. Won't take the entire 8 minutes that it usually does because our ingredients are already hot. So that's gonna help things move along. So it'll come up to pressure, and then we will cook it under pressure for 5 minutes, and then we'll do an immediate release. So we just have a few seconds left on our 5-minute pressure cook. And I wanted to let you know that it really came up to pressure like fast, like maybe 3 minutes, and the red button popped up and we started to count down. So that's pretty quick. All right, so we've finished our 5 minutes, and I'm gonna go ahead and do an immediate release. Okay, our red button has depressed, so we can open up the lid. I will do that. I usually like to open this away from me so that it doesn't direct the steam towards my face. And then I can set the pressure lid over there. And now the magic happens. I learned this technique from my mom many years ago. When she would make her turkey dinner, she had a big roasting pan, and all the drippings from the turkey would be in the roasting pan, and she'd set the thing up on the stove top, and she'd turn the burners on, and she'd start to let it boil. And I was like, what are you doing? She's like, this is how you make the best gravy. And so I have used that technique every time I want to make gravy. And that's essentially what we're doing here. We're making sausage gravy. So this mixture is really hot. There's still a few little bubbles going on in there that I can see. And we are going to sift in our flour. And that is going to prevent those lumps that sometimes happen. So I have a fine mesh strainer here, and I'm going to dump this in. And I will not put all of it in at once because I want the fat from that sausage to absorb this flour. So I'm going to put one coating and let it just sit for a minute. So I will take this and just put it right back on top of the bowl here. And then I'm just gonna let it sit for a minute. The keep warm is still on, that is fine. You could actually turn the saute back on if you wanted to get it a little bit hotter, but I don't think that's gonna be necessary. Sometimes I'll advise that you turn the keep warm off. It depends on what you're cooking. So if you're cooking pasta, I usually say turn it off. If you're cooking rice, turn it off because you don't wanna overcook those items. This we're not gonna overcook, so we can leave it on, it's fine. In fact, it's gonna help keep the right temperature. So now that it is absorbed in, and I can just see little bits of the white flour, and that's not gonna cause any problems, we're gonna go ahead and agitate it into the beef stock and the sausage. I can see those little bits of thyme and rosemary. Man, this smells so good. So once I don't see that anymore and I'm not seeing any clumps or anything like that, then I will repeat the process until I use the entire half a cup of flour. Now, if your sausage gives off a little bit more fat, more grease, you might have to use a little bit more flour. So you'll have to use your judgment on that. But I've made this recipe before and a half of a cup was plenty. Okay, so we're gonna do the same thing and just let it sit for a minute. Okay, so that looks good. And we're just gonna go ahead and repeat this process. And you'll see that your beef stock and sausage mixture is getting a lot thicker. And that's exactly what we want. And just repeat that using all of the flour. One trick to know when you have used enough flour is when you no longer see a glistening on top. That means there's no more fat to combine with the flour, so you want to stop at that point. You don't want to have this to have a floury taste. You want every bit of the fat to be absorbed by the flour, and that will result in a nice, creamy, and flavorful gravy and not have it taste like flour. Okay, so I'm gonna mix in the last little bit of our flour, and I just have a few little pieces here that I'm not going to worry about. Those are like little clumps, and that's another reason why I really like to sift my flour. Before almost any time I cook with flour, I like to sift it. Okay, so we'll mix this in. You can see it's a very thick mixture. And now we're gonna add in our milk. And I have 1.5 cups of whole milk here. You could use a low fat, you could use half and half, you could use cream if you wanted to really be indulgent, but I found that the whole milk worked just fine. Oh, this looks good. The smell is amazing and it looks good. Now you might say, oh, it's not really white. It will turn a lot whiter. And personally, I think the flavor that the beef stock imparts in the gravy is worth losing that bright white of a traditional sausage gravy. I don't think you're going to notice the difference once we're all done. Now, some ways that you can serve your sausage gravy over scrambled eggs is a good option, but obviously the best is those biscuits. So I just happen to have some in the freezer and I got them out, and we're gonna bake them right here in the Ninja Foodi over top of our sausage gravy. And that way this really is a one pot type of breakfast and great for a crowd. All right, almost done. Now it might look like it's a little thin. It will thicken up as we heat it, as we bake it, when we bake the biscuits. All right, that looks great. So now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna turn the Ninja Foodi off for right now and grab my rack that has my 2 biscuits, and I'm gonna stick them here. Ordinarily, when I'm baking or air frying, I don't recommend having water or broth in the bottom, but this is not going to affect these biscuits, so it's fine. Just put your rack in. If you prefer, you can remove your sausage gravy now, but I want to keep mine warm, so I'm going to do it just like this. Put your lid down, and we're going to bake roast. The temp we're going to do is 375, and the time is 12 minutes. And we're gonna hit start. Then we're just gonna let them bake. I'm gonna check them probably like at the 6-minute mark and just make sure that I don't have to do any adjusting of the times. But I think we're gonna be just fine. Okay, so our biscuits have been in for just about 8 minutes at 375. Let's take a little peek and see how they're coming along. Oh my, they are beautiful. I would almost say that they are done. Now, the last time I made these, they had to go the full 12 minutes. So what I want to do right now is just bump the heat down just a tad and let them cook a little bit longer because I do not want that middle to be done, but I don't want the outside to brown too much more. And I like a really crunchy biscuit. All right, so we're coming up on the last 10 seconds of the cooking time for the biscuits. And then I will allow it to cool down, which just takes a few seconds for it to go through its cooling phase. And then we'll open the lid and we will get this delicious sausage gravy plated up, and I'll give it a taste. I'm gonna use my little handy dandy finger silicone mitts that are heat resistant up to, I think it's 500 degrees to pull this out, because this is going to be hot when you pull it out. And then I'm just gonna set it down here. Oops, let me fold that little baby back out. Okay, and we have our biscuits. Now there's gonna be a little skin on the top of this. So what you wanna do is just stir it in and let it dissolve. It does not affect the texture or the taste at all. And just stir that in. It looks delicious. Okay, so I'm gonna let these cool just for a second. Now, I like my biscuits really brown on the outside. If you don't want them as crunchy, decrease the bake time by 2 minutes. So just bake them at 375 for 10 minutes and you should be fine. I just like mine really, really crispy on the outside. So let me pop this over to my plate. Oh, it's just beautiful. You can see all the nice little layers that were formed as the butter melted and steam developed, and it makes that rise. It's just gorgeous. I will link to the recipe right over there and also in the description below, so you can check it out. You really want to make these biscuits. They are incredible. All right, let's open it up. Oh, glorious. Perfect. There's a fluffy inside with a crispy exterior. Oh, this is gonna be wonderful. Now let me get this sausage gravy on top here. Oh wow, and see how it thickened up? So when it looked a little thinner in the beginning, it thickened up as it baked. So it's actually a perfect consistency right now. And the smell is just fantastic. Okay, oh, the crunch of that biscuit. Wow. All right, let's get a little bite here. It's gonna be hot. Incredible. Really incredible. That rosemary and the thyme in there just made this sausage gravy pop with flavor. I'm not even a huge fan of sausage gravy, and this I will crave. It is absolutely delicious. So please, please make it. You will not regret it. So that's it for this video. We made a super easy sausage gravy in our Ninja Foodi. I hope you enjoyed it. Please give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed yet, you can subscribe at the end right over there. And make sure you click the bell so you get notified when we put out new videos. We also have 2 Facebook groups, Ninja Foodi 101, where we go through some basics and some tips and tricks to get the most out of your foodie. So if you're interested in that, please be sure to join. We also have a Facebook group, Ninja Foodi Fresh and Healthy Meals, where we try to keep it a little bit healthier and utilize our foodie to the fullest. So until next time, see you later.